Here's a good example. Ephesians chapter 6. Now, you might keep a ribbon in 1 John because we're going to come back in just a second, but I do want to take you to Ephesians for a moment. I want to show you the Apostle Paul in chapter 6, the famous whole armor of God passage. And I just want to read one verse from Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. Paul says this, "We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places." That 12th verse, our earliest Greek, the middle of that verse says, "We against the rulers of this present darkness." Hear what Paul said. Our wrestling is against the rulers of this age's present darkness. He saw darkness as something defined by an era, defined by an age. The same age, by the way, that he said to the Roman church, "Be ye not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed." So he used the same word for world. "Be ye not conformed to this age, but be transformed by renewing your mind." Because this age is a problem. So I ask you, what age is it that he's talking about? Well, let's go back to John. I told you we go back to 1 John. I want to take you to 1 John chapter 2. We were in 1 John 1. Just jump one chapter over. John, look at chapter 2, verse 8. "A new commandment I write to you, which thing is true in him and in you, because the darkness is passing away and the true light is already shining." Whoa. The darkness, what darkness? Ephesians 6, this present darkness. 1 John 2, the darkness is passing away and the true light is already shining. He who says he's in the light and hates his brother, he's in darkness until now. He who loves his brother abides in the light. There's no cause for stumbling in him. He who hates his brother is in darkness, and he walks in darkness, and he doesn't know where he's going because the darkness has done what? Blinded his eyes. In other words, same thing Jesus said to Paul on the road to Damascus. "I'm going to send you to the Jew and the Gentiles to open their eyes so that when they open their eyes, they can come out of darkness into the light." So the darkness isn't a place. The way you get out of it is to have your eyes opened. It's not a room. It's not a cave. It's not a spiritual oppression. It was the age they were living in. And I want you to rewind with me for a moment. What was the age they were living in? Well, you have a group of men who were raised under Moses' law. The founders of the Christian faith as we know it were all Jewish. The foundation of their Jewishness was both Abraham and his circumcision, and the fact that they could trace their blood lineage through the genealogical records to Abraham and his circumcision. That made them by blood part of the family. By faith, they wouldn't have called it religion. Maybe they call it religion. Let's call it religion with them. By religion, their connection is through Moses, who has given them both the law and the sacrifice and the priesthood. So they have the law, how to live. They have the sacrifice for what to do when they fail to live. And they have the priesthood that represents them to God. And this conglomerate connects them in union. And then comes Jesus. And this group meets Jesus. And they're convinced. Not every Jew in Jesus' day is convinced. In fact, a very small amount of people in Jesus' day are actually convinced. But let's go with that small amount for a moment. Raised on Moses, connected by blood to Abraham, but they believe in Jesus. Never has a man spoke like this man. I've watched him open the eyes of the blind and heal the sick and raise the dead. Surely he is the Son of God. He died, and then we determined that the death was not a failure, the death was a success because we saw him resurrected. He's alive. He's real. And then he made us a promise that if we hung out in Jerusalem for a few days, he would give us a promise from God that was invisible. And you know what he did? It was amazing. The whole house shook and fire fell from heaven. And it was as if we were hearing the very voice of God come out of our mouths. And everywhere we turned and told people about him, stuff happened. And so you can't convince me he's not real. I'll lay my head on the chopping block and you'll have to kill me. And that's exactly what happened to that first generation. And they went all the way to their deaths going, he's real. John opens his letter with 1 John 1, he goes, I touched him, I saw him, I handled the light of life. He's real, you'll never convince me otherwise. He's the real deal. But pressing them as they walk through is their heritage and their past. Because they're walking away from the performance-based religion of Moses, and they're being persecuted every day for it. And there ain't no persecution like that of your family. See, we look at the early church and we think of them as being oppressed by the Pharisees and being oppressed by the Romans. And that was happening. But you want to know where the biggest oppression was? The one Jesus warned them about. Jesus said, if you follow me... Now listen to this. How many of you would sign up for this? You ready? I'm going to quote Jesus for you. If you follow me, your enemies are going to be the members of your own house. Your dad's going to turn against you, and your mom's going to turn against you, and your wife's going to turn against you, and your kids are going to turn against you. And he said, come follow me. Now, why did he say that? He said, I didn't come to... This was Jesus talking. I didn't come to spread peace. I come to spread a sword. What did he mean by that? Do I want to kill people? No, it was a very specific contextual statement. He said, it's going to cost you to follow me because you have relied on this heritage. And everybody agrees with you. And that's what's great about your heritage and your religion and your family. But when you follow me, none of that stuff's going to work anymore. And the people you love the most are going to be the people that hate you the most. And he said, you got to be ready for that because this ain't going to be easy. That which is simple is not always easy. The gospel is simple. But following Jesus is not always easy. Right? Oh, believing in Jesus is easy. That's part of the gospel. Following Jesus, where all the other stuff dies. And so you're a good Jesus follower, and you're doing all you can to leave Moses, and you walk into Jerusalem, and you hear the bells ringing on the high priest's robe, and you smell the incense, and you hear the blood splashing on the stone steps of the temple, and it rushes you back to Grandpa and Daddy and all the times they brought you into the temple and you got to throw coins into the offering basket and you got to put your hands on the little lamb before they transferred your sins into it, and you smelled the incense coming out of the temple and you thought, we are the people of God. Look at what we have. And then comes Jesus and he says to you, none of that stuff matters anymore. You kill a lamb, doesn't matter, I'm the lamb. You got incense, doesn't matter, I'm the fragrance before God. Hard to leave that stuff behind and go follow Jesus when the great persecution's coming from you from the outside. So let me ask you this. For John, for Paul, for Peter, what was the darkness? Was it Rome or was it Moses? And I think it doesn't take you to dig very deep into the New Testament to realize that the way they felt was, what you needed to close your eyes to was the self-dependency that never made you a priest. It never gave you the mercy of God. It never made you the chosen person. It never gave you perpetual forgiveness of sins. And you need to open your eyes to a system that does all of that, that takes all the other priests away and makes you a priest. That takes that takes hierarchies away in the spirit realm and makes you the chosen man and gives you forgiveness of sins and gives you mercy. That was walking in the light. And when we get that, he said, that's the freedom of this light.